All right, Brian, you're good.
I know. I'm waiting for anybody to join. It says attendees 1, 2, 3.
Oh, okay,
I'm just
there
waiting
you
for
go.
a couple people to join. So, good morning, everyone. Ben's going to get our Facebook Live feed here going just so we can all be sunk up together before we introduce everyone. Week 2 of our webinar / podcast radio thing going on here. So we got a couple new panelists that are going to talk today about mental health. And we're going to talk about some things that they're doing down in Texas for the association. And then we got Pat here from who's the treasurer of Florida, Arvik, and also owns a couple parks. Going to talk to us about some things that are going on down there. Ben, you ready to go?
Just about, yep.
All right. So there's about a 20-second delay between what you're seeing on Zoom and what we're seeing on Facebook. So if you've got questions, there is a Q&A feature at the bottom. You can submit your questions. You can also raise your hand, or you can just comment on Facebook. Ben's going to be monitoring those, I think. And we'll just try to get you guys as involved as we possibly can. So I think we're ready to go. It says it's live on my end, Ben. So
yeah. So welcome, Facebook audience. I think last week we might not have explained either. If you're joining us on Facebook, feel free to leave comments, and we'll get to them during the live broadcast. And then if we do bring people on from our Zoom feed during, to ask questions or to be part of the discussion as well. So if you want to join in on that, you have to go in through our Zoom. I can post the registration link here real quickly so that you guys can have the link to join us. And then this is an interactive discussion, so people will be commenting throughout the discussion, and we'll be trying to branch out into some different things, so there's not a set schedule. So I guess we'll just start with introductions, if everybody just kind of wants to go around and talk about who they are real briefly. So,
all right, let's start with our guests. Cally, you want to go first?
Sure. So hi, everybody. I am so looking forward to this today. My name is Cally Strandquist, and I have my own practice for counseling. So I am in the process of becoming a registered psychologist, but due to COVID-19, that's a little bit on hold right now. Things are shut down, but nonetheless, I am finished my master's program, which is what's needed to be a psychologist in Alberta here. And I also work at Clearview Public School Division as a family school liaison, which is like a school counselor. I've been doing that for 6 years, and just, opening my practice. Obviously, mental health is really important to me. I live in Stettler. It's a small community, central Alberta, kind of close to Red Deer, in the middle between Calgary and Edmonton, if that gives everybody a kind of a good idea. I think that's a little bit about me.
Yeah.
Thank you. Pat, you want to go?
Sure. Patrick O'Neill, general manager of Camp Golf in Destin, Florida. Been there for 25 years. It's a park that I lease from an out-of-state owner. And then I have another park that I've built with my children over the last 6 years, Twin Lakes Camp Resort in the north end of the county, which is a smaller park, draws from a smaller radius of market. And it's a much quieter park. It's on a peninsula between some lakes, do some fishing as opposed to both swimming. And I'm also the current treasurer of the Florida Association. I was the treasurer of the National Association for 6 years, about 6 years ago.
Awesome. Thank you. Nice to have you, Pat. Michael?
I am Michael Moore. I'm the general manager of Texas Advertising. We primarily run the Texas Association of Campground Owners, or as we like to call it, TACO. And then we have a couple other divisions that people may be familiar with, AGS on the sitemap side, and then TexEd Web Design and Development on the internet side.
Awesome. Thank you, Michael. Cara?
Yeah, hi, I'm Cara Braeutigam. I'm the member services rep for the Canadian Camping and RV Council. We represent private campground owners across Canada.
Ben, nobody knows you. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Ben Quiggle, editor of Woodalls Campground Management magazine, and we also operate woodallscm.com. So.
And I'm Brian Searl. We do marketing for about 200 different campgrounds across the country. So really just kind of jump right in here. And I want to start with you, Michael, briefly. We're going to talk a lot about your association, TACO, and what it's doing a little bit later on. But just as a brief kind of introductory question, we've seen a lot with different states down here that are opening up. Some are opening, some are staying closed, some are kind of finding the middle ground. But with campgrounds specifically, what are you doing advocacy-wise with your government to try to encourage people to allow you to open up as we move forward and loosen some restrictions?
Sure. So the biggest thing so far is we had a call with the CEO of the Texas Economic Development Corporation last week. They work with the governor's office here in Texas to kind of stress campgrounds and what we're doing right now to obviously take every precaution possible, but kind of reiterate how important it is and what we're going to do when the state does open back up. And I know our governor, I think, has a press conference in about an hour or two, because I know he's going to be loosening up some other restrictions and kind of have a schedule for all that. So yeah, so no, his office actually reached out to us because they work with our other tourism partners and realize how essential I think that campgrounds are. So yeah, that would probably be the biggest thing. And then obviously stressing to our campgrounds, we have up to 400 members at any one time, to make sure that their cities and their counties make sure what they're doing and what precautions they're taking, et cetera. Because again, let's face it, campgrounds, I think, are fairly low on the priority list for a lot of these city and state offices. So we need to make sure that they understand exactly how we operate and what we're doing to make sure that we're being safe, but also at the same time, not completely shutting people out, because I think the worst thing that anyone could do is kick an RVer out and make them, park in a Walmart parking lot or on the side of the road. So it's things like that, making sure that our campgrounds are aware of how important they are and what they can do to kind of stress that to the powers that be.
So are there specifics that you're outlining or laying out to these governments that maybe you're saying that obviously we're going to do social distancing, but are there specific steps that we're going to take that would make you more comfortable with allowing us to open sooner than later?
Well, I know currently, back when the shelters in places were hitting, and Texas is obviously a little different than other states in many ways, but in one of them, it was not so much a statewide order as every city and county was literally giving different orders and at different times, and each one would have a different definition of essential, right? So that was kind of the big thing, was we'd get calls from parks all over the state and say, what do I do? And does this mean I need to close, blah, blah, blah. And the first step was kind of making sure they understood what is essential. So they're obviously providing accommodations, lodging, stuff like that, but also things like propane, laundry facilities, stuff like that. So that was the first step to make sure they understood, hey, you are essential and you need to stay open. Now going forward, yeah, I mean, inherently, we all know that camping is an activity you can do within the confines of your RV and doesn't require a whole lot of social interaction if you don't need it. But again, some of those powers that be don't. So it's more about stressing to them that, hey, campgrounds are taking precautions. I mean, I've seen a lot of things about things like mobile check-in, which is great, and making sure that you're obviously cleaning regularly, the bathrooms, the laundries, etc. But stuff, even the basics like that, is important to let your state and city and county officials know what we're doing. Because again, I don't know that they think about campgrounds a whole lot, at least right now. So we need to make sure that we're at least on the radar with them.
Well, so one of the, go ahead, Ben, sorry.
No, yeah, I think that's a great point. Just being able to get in front of officials, because they've got so much coming at them right now that the RV park down the street may not be the biggest problem they've got facing them. So you've got to get in front of them to be able to say, hey, we're here and we would like to reopen. So.
Well, so here's what I've seen. I mean, Ben and you and I both talked to probably hundreds of different campground owners. And what I'm seeing more consistently down here is either A, I'm going to be open as normal, or I'm going to remain closed based on the guidance from my state. And I haven't seen a lot of middle ground. Like obviously there's social distancing, but there hasn't been a lot of detailed planning to make both the government as well as the local public who live in my area more comfortable with me welcoming transients or my regular clientele. And so Cara had sent me some really nice detailed things that CCRVC put together up there. And so I just wanted to give her the floor for a minute and talk about both why she felt those were necessary and kind of maybe share some of the things that goes into at least phase one with us, Cara.
Yeah, so I mean, the National Association has kind of provided a framework or standardized kind of basic guidelines for a 3-phase reopening plan. A lot of that is still in the works in terms of delivery and time frame, and I think will be dependent on feedback from some of the officials and government offices we're communicating that stuff with. And obviously there's variables in terms of province and things like that. Each of the provincial associations is making additions and edits to that phase plan specific to their areas kind of as we speak. But the plan kind of, there's several steps that repeat throughout each phase, but basically phase one starts with a pretty specific list of restrictions in terms of how many minimum feet between individual RVs or units, requirements obviously for social distancing, maintenance, all of the public bathroom and shower and laundry facilities remaining closed at this time, just a various long list for guests, but then as well a ton of suggestions, for employees and employers. So, you know, a list of requirements from employees that include, you know, making sure that they're utilizing any training their employer gives them and practicing proper protocol and usage of any PPE, personal protective equipment, all kinds of specifics, but then slowly through those phases, it will begin to lessen the restrictions. Like I said, I'm not sure on timeline delivery yet and when those phases will transition, but we have a solid plan, and I think we are definitely seeing some provinces being really receptive already. Saskatchewan has lifted, I know that province name, several of you might wrap your brains around. Saskatchewan has already approved a phase one there and have launched it, and their private campgrounds are open to Saskatchewan residents, I believe, starting today. The other provinces, I don't think will be far behind with starting in phase one.
So one of the things that really stood out to me, Cara, was just the level of detail in this, right? And so a lot of people are, you know, yes, we can have people be a certain number of feet apart. We're going to keep swimming pools and some bathrooms closed, but just the level of detail that you guys put in, not only with the 30 feet between people, but that campers are responsible for, you know, I've got it pulled up in front of me, placing their own garbage into the dumpster, that you must offer contact-free registration and checkout options, that you've got to sign a waiver for health order guidelines. But then even the things for the employees and the owners going into, you know, you've got to train your employees on what the symptoms are and what to look for, and that they have to take their temperature. And so that's kind of really what impressed me, just the level of thought that went into that. How are you feeling that plays out more so than just kind of presenting generics?
Well, I think number one, a lot of that came specifically from our conversations with the public health authorities in several of the provinces. Those were recommendations we were seeing kind of over and over and over again. So, you know, in our opinion, if those government agencies are making those requests of businesses on an individual basis during their health inspections, then it makes sense that those are specified guidelines that they want to see happening across the board before, you know, things can be operational. So this is just a good way to deliver that information broadly to our member base, but also, you know, during this whole scenario, we've been sharing all of our information with members and non-members across the country. We want all of the campgrounds in Canada to be able to operate and be open in whatever capacity is, you know, safe for the public and following any guidelines in their area.
And part of that too is an education for the public, right? Because I know we've had some campgrounds down here that have gotten, you know, kind of social media hasn't been too friendly to them because the public just doesn't understand, you know, maybe what's going into the running the campgrounds, or, you know, the stuff that they're doing at the campground. So part of that is like informing the public, hey, we're taking all of these steps and we're following these guidelines and we're a safe place, you know, we're trying to be a safe place for these campers to come and enjoy the outdoors.
Absolutely, I agree. We have seen in our area here too, I had a petition launch last week to keep private campgrounds closed. Definitely communicating to the public about the I mean, there's significant drastic steps, like Brian said, outlined in that document, and frankly, I think a lot of those will outlast the phased plan. I think even after phase 3 we're through that, I think employers are still going to have to be delivering specific training about PPE. I think usage of PPE and you know, some of the things, the ways people are checking in, the contactless payment and all of that stuff is going to continue long after this. So I think it's relevant and great that the public knows about it, so that you know, there's a lot more confidence instilled in our ability not only to social distance in campgrounds, but do it in a safe and really cognizant way, where we are aware of how important it is to follow these requirements and guidelines to be safe for everybody.
And that's one of the reasons that I wanted to spark kind of this discussion, is because I feel like it's not being had out here, at least not publicly that I've seen, and at least not that Ben has brought to my attention and other people. And so Pat, for example, what do you think of some of the, I mean, how are you going to change, if at all, operations at your park when you open back up? Or more fully?
Yeah, we'll probably start filling up on Friday. My reservations for May at Camp Golf are full. My reservations for June and July are full, and the phone's ringing off the hook. We got 6 to 8 lines, busy all the time, for people trying to get in this summer and be able to get a beach fix and get down here. So we're concerned about next winter and what, because we're an anomaly in Florida. Most parks in Florida are like the northern parks. They're open 6 months of the year, and the parks in South Florida, they're open for the snowbirds, and in the summertime, they really don't have anybody in them. But we're in Northwest Florida in one of the more rural areas, and we're right on the beach. So we're a destination year round for 4 different markets. So we stay busy with 4 slight lulls in between those market time periods. And when nobody can go to the beach, because our beaches were closed locally, not by the governor, and that's a whole nother discussion as to how they went about keeping people off the beach. It was a civil liberties violation of the police, the commissioners voting to keep private beaches open, which we are, and then the police showing up on the beach to prevent anybody from getting in the water. So that's another discussion. But I think that we're pretty much out of it here. We had 35 cases in Walton County. We haven't had a case in about a week, and we only had 5 that were hospitalized. Now, they won't provide you the data of how many are recovered, but I'll bet you as the testing goes on, we're going to find that there were more people who had it than they thought. And in fact, I think I had it. I think my family had it. I think the whole church had it. I think some of my staff had it. I was at the Tampa RV show in early January, and I was at the C.A.M.P show in Kissimmee in the week before that in the first week of January. And I think that myself and some others picked it up, and it was the horse left the barn a long time before they figured out when to close things and when to quarantine people.
Well, so Pat, though, does anything change from your perspective at your park, though, operation-wise? Like, are you just open business as usual?
Like I said, when we transitioned from our snowbirds to our spring break, was around the beginning of March. That's when this really started to come out, and more attention was being put on. Maybe we should quarantine people. And I actually had a COVID case in the park, and she didn't get it in the park. She got it from her sister. Excuse me, let the COVID out of my throat. She got it from her sister, and then she came back and she gave it to her husband, who has some dementia. And then she went into the hospital, and there was no one to care for her husband. So one of the other neighbors helped out with him, and he got it. Now, they all 3 tested positive. One of them was in the hospital, and this was long before they said we need to shut things down. And so I'm aware of multiple other cases that happened long before anybody panicked about this and said we need to be worried about it. But most of my snowbirds had left. These were just a few who were lingering. So I'm concerned about the elderly who come back next winter. And so what we've done is we put a new policy in place. It's starting for the summer. You can find it on our website at Camp Golf. It says what the new normal is going to look like. And the new normal is going to look like more social distancing at functions. We're going to space the chairs at the dinners further apart. We've got some extra seating. We've put up about 40% additional seating at the activity center. We're not going to have any large functions this summer at all. We're also going to stop parking people. One of the things that we do here is we park every guest who arrives, and we're just not going to have that interaction. We have a interactionless or a contactless check-in right now, which we'll probably observe through the summer and on into the fall. We clean our security gate pad on a regular basis. We stopped serving soft serve ice cream. And last Friday, I met with my air conditioning company, who's going to install a broadband emitter on all of my public buildings' air conditioning units, which is something that kills viruses. It's a light emitter with a power supply that goes inside the air conditioners. Because once it gets above 80, the virus isn't very effective anyway. And so that's why we're kind of coming out of this a little earlier. We're in a rural area that hasn't experienced a whole lot of it, and it's getting warm already. So I think we're going to fit that first level of reopening here, and maybe be a test case for how people will social distance. Even though our county has ranked as one of the top counties in the country, I don't know how they test this, but they send people out to see whether or not people are social distancing or not, and we've ranked in the I think top 10% or so for that. So we're preparing for it. I think we'll do some things this summer, but I'm more concerned about the elderly. A lot of younger people get this; they don't even know they have it. But I think the elderly have proven, the case in New York has proven that's really the target that we need to be concerned with. And if I want them to be my customer, then I need to do everything that I can to help them have a good stay. And I think we proved last winter by just having a few cases who only were really close to each other, only because they lived in the same RV or they went in the RV to take care of each other, that it didn't spread beyond that. I had the health department out, and they said, we don't have any procedures for you to follow. There's nothing that we can give you to implement any policies. So we met with some managers, we came up with some policies, and the first thing we did was notify anybody who had contact with any of these people, and call anybody who had already left the park who had contact with them, and let them know that we did have some positive cases.
So Michael, I'm sorry, Michael, what are you seeing from, and I didn't mean to cut you off, Pat, I'm sorry, I thought you were just finishing your thought. Michael, what are you,
for the whole hour.
Michael, what are you seeing from your different parks down there? Are they implementing specific policies at their parks to, in addition to social distancing 6 feet, is there anything they're doing to change operations as they open back up?
You know, it's varied, obviously. I think like every state, you've got a lot that are going to the contactless check-in now, like kind of Pat said. So do I think that will be forever? No, but I think right now it probably will be, at least while we're kind of in the middle of what's going on here. Other than that, you know, kind of to reiterate what Pat was saying at his park, obviously there's a lot of activities that are kind of on hold right now. Other than that, there's not really a whole lot of things I think people are doing differently. I mean, our phones are ringing off the hook too, because people are just jonesing to get out again and make sure their reservations are still good. We stress the CDC guidelines, but again, beyond that, everyone's kind of taken a different approach to it, you know, and some, quite honestly, I mean, again, we have parks here that I think are, you know, I don't want to say they're not doing more than other states, but again, they're kind of trying to get back to as normal as possible. So that's what we're kind of seeing a lot here. But again, each city and county is different. And again, kind of to reiterate what Pat said, each city and county doesn't really have specifics for the campgrounds. We're kind of the ones having to go to them to kind of tell them, hey, right, this is what we're doing, and this is what we're following. And for the most part, I mean, that seems to be sufficient. You know, I think I know of one county in Texas that, again, during the thick of it, kind of said, hey, no new RVers can come into the park. I mean, I don't know of another county that did that. It was more shelter in places and, hey, everyone that's there, stay there and stuff like that. But yeah, as far as changing operations and stuff like that, not particularly. It's more about stressing to their customer on their website, and through email and calls and stuff like that, and really training their staff too to let customers know what they're doing. So if they are let them know they're adhering to the CDC guidelines. Let them know if the pool's closed, let's say. But beyond that, yeah, we have a lot of campgrounds that are trying to get back to as much normal as possible. I wish I had a better answer for that, but no, we're gearing up for the spring.
I'm just going to play devil's advocate here. I'm not coming down on either side of this because we have different clients in all different areas and all different states and all that kind of thing. But do you think there's a risk in returning too quickly to business as normal, where we're not spacing out campers in different sites, where we're not having guidelines like Canada has set forth, for example, just one. I know PCOA, Pennsylvania, has done some specific things with their association too. Is there a risk to moving too quickly back to what normal used to be?
Well, again, we're definitely following the CDC guidelines, though. So let's.
Right, but those aren't campground specific, is what I mean. So.
Oh, sure, but they do apply to the campgrounds, though. Meaning 6 feet apart. No touching of the face, and trying to minimize contact between people there. And again, doing a lot of the stuff that Pat was saying in his own park, meaning cutting down on activities, obviously cleaning much more than you are now. I mean, look, the thing is, I don't know that anyone can predict what is going to happen with this. All we can do is take the precautions that we know we can at this point. And look, I know a lot of people, I think are fully aware of the risk involved. I mean, we all do. But to kind of measure it, I don't know that anyone can accurately do that right now.
I don't think so.
Yeah, all we can do is follow what the government is saying to do, and then beyond that, we're all in kind of wait and see and trial mode at this point, right? Because I think we all hope that it doesn't extend into the fall, but can anyone say 100%? No. So what we have to do is be as cautious as possible. We have to be as careful as possible, and again, I think a lot of the things that parks are doing, things like that parks like Pat's are doing, are going to be good in the long run to do. I mean, look, let's face it, until there's a vaccine, I don't know that 100% of campers are going to be comfortable, but what we can do is give them peace of mind that our parks are taking the precautions necessary to still give them a good time. And again, it's really going to depend on the state and the city as far as resuming, quote, normal activities and stuff like that. So I know a lot of yogi parks, for example, are itching to get back into being allowed to do the family activities and to do the group settings and stuff like that. I don't know when they'll be able to do that. Each park, I think, is in the long run going to have to make that decision for themselves.
It's really interesting to me how variable the reaction is from government, though. Like here we are, our schools are closed until September. We have been regulated, like every major event in my province has been canceled until September. That's, our rodeo, the campground I used to own made 30% of its annual income during the week of the rodeo. That's been going on for over 100 years. They just canceled the rodeo. It's so interesting to me how serious maybe certain officials are taking this compared to others, and it's concerning for me to see that potentially that potential variability could have an impact not only on industry and the economy, but for sure our members and camping specifically, and of course public health too. It's going to be an interesting 6 months here coming up, I think.
Yeah, definitely. Michael, I think I know when I've talked with Brian, you had mentioned that you guys still have quite a few snowbirds down in Texas, I believe. I guess they've been kind of sheltering in place during the COVID-19 crisis. I guess, and maybe Pat, you might have quite a few snowbirds in Florida too. I guess, how has that kind of helped, the campground owners down there kind of stay busy, I guess?
Michael, you want to go first?
Sure. For several parks, they had people that were expected to leave, just, stay another month or two. Especially for the Rio Grande Valley here in Texas, which is where a lot of our snowbirds spend the winter. They extended their stay. It kind of, again, it's kind of like what was said before. There's so many different ways of handling this by the states and the cities that we had some RVers that could literally find a place to stay overnight on their way home, wherever it may be. So those folks were not necessarily in danger. If other folks could not find a way home, those are the folks that extended their stay. So we definitely saw an uptick of that as far as people extending their stay. And again, happy to have them, because again, certainly during the thick of the shelters in place and the shutdowns, you had a lot of folks that had a lot of reservations that canceled, but hey, that opened sites up for the people that needed somewhere to go. And so, yeah, no, we definitely saw an uptick. I think Brian even gave an interview to the New York Times a couple of weeks ago, because they were covering the same thing as far as snowbirds and what do they do? Where do they go? If God forbid they don't have a place to go.
Yeah, Pat, I guess, do you have any comments on that?
Yeah, we experienced a little bit of the opposite with the snowbirds. The ones from Canada were mandated to go home, and so they left early. And I kind of lean more towards the civil liberties side of, we need the diversity and people making their own decisions. We need the communities making their own decisions rather than a central government mandate, because one size doesn't fit all. And I understand the science behind it, but the science of the two AIDS scientists who had one plan, which was shut everything down immediately, doesn't apply here. What's going on in New York City doesn't apply in Walton County. The other park that we have in the north part of the county, which I said is a smaller park, we haven't had as many people in the rentals because there's been a short-term rental ban. But we're open under the Florida Health Department as an essential business. And people who are quarantining or they're doing their stay at home, they're wanting to do it in their RV. And so we're full every weekend. And a good bit of the week, we're half full, because people are responsible and they know how to social distance, but they want to be outside, and they know that vitamin D and the sunlight is good for them. And they want to get out and do things and cook out and be with their kids. And so that park has done really well. And we noticed that in a smaller sense here. And I think people, they get tired of being locked up in their house, which isn't really the safest thing to do anyway. I think the hindsight of this whole thing, and maybe you're going to go there, Ben, but the hindsight of this is going to be, we're going to learn a lot of lessons from this particular ordeal of how not to do this again and how to do it correctly. Because something like this is going to come around again. History doesn't necessarily repeat itself, but it rhymes. We've been through this before. We've got plans in place because we have hurricanes, we've had oil spills, we've had flooding with 15 inches of rain in an hour. So there are emergencies that take place, and we got to learn from each one of them. And we're going to learn a lot from this one.
Michael, I guess, I've been reading some articles where the snowbirds are preparing to head north. They want to get home. And as we see restrictions lighten up, obviously some of them will make that trip home. I guess, how does that impact, how do you think that'll impact Texas campground owners? Are there going to be transient campers or people local that are going to be able to come to these parks to fill those spots? Or is there going to be a little bit of a gap, I guess?
Well, I mean, I can only go off of what we're hearing from our campgrounds, but every one of them to a T are getting calls from folks asking open or when they're opening again. And again, what we're stressing to them is absolutely look up the guidelines or kind of the orders that your city and counties are giving out, and definitely follow them. Because again, no one wants to kind of buck those trends there. But at the same time, we also know that for a lot of the campgrounds, they are doing things to make sure that their people are safe. And again, I go back to, it's about stressing to those customers what they're doing, because the customer wants peace of mind. They want to know that, hey, I can go to a place that feels safe, that this campground acknowledges what's going on, and they're doing what they can to ensure that I can enjoy myself and have a good time. So again, for us, it's about information, because again, for Texas, it's hard to kind of apply a one size fits all rule. Probably much like Florida, because you just got so many in so many different parts of the state. So it's more about making sure our campgrounds are getting info out and making sure they're educated too, making sure that they understand what is going on and what they can do about it. So as far as any trends go, I mean, again, I can only report what our campgrounds are saying now, but every one of them that we've talked to, the phone is ringing and people are asking if they're open. And again, it's going to be a trial and error thing, I think, as we go along, meaning I think restrictions will be loosened. And look, the powers that be are going to kind of go, okay, then that worked and let's go. Or if, again, God forbid it doesn't, okay, we kind of take it as it comes. But yeah, again, I don't know that anyone can say for sure what's going to happen, but I think we all know that we have to find some kind of middle ground and compromise here. We cannot necessarily stay locked in for 6 months on end. We have to adapt. And again, not
Absolutely.
to say it's going to be back to normal in 3-6 months. It's not. I fully acknowledge that. But I do think that that people will find a way to adapt and be safe and do what they can to make sure that their staff and their customers are as protected as possible while still giving them that camping experience.
So I want to switch for Ben. Did you have a quick question? But
yeah, just real quick. I guess just on the snowbird thing. I guess looking ahead, and I know this is months down the road. I guess Pat, Michael. I guess Cara maybe too. I guess how does snowbird travel in the fall and winter change because of this? Do you think snowbirds are going to move south again like normal, or are they going to be a little bit more hesitant? Maybe,
And I think they're going to be a little more hesitant. One of the reasons that our snowbirds left early was because their family members called them and said, "Hey, come home. We're concerned about you. We don't want you to be out there. If you're gonna be at home and shelter in with us." And some said, some maybe selfishly, "We got our kids, and we need you to watch the grandkids help us with the grandkids." But they did. There was a strong push for them to leave early, and I think there's going to be a strong pull for them to not leave next year.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think we're going to see the same types of numbers in terms of snowbirds come the fall that we normally would. I think a lot of people are going to be sticking close to home. I mean, obviously there's so many variables. It's going to depend on, how things look in their home areas as well as how things look in their destination areas. And so I don't think we can solidly say for sure, but I definitely think a lot will just say, you know what, we'll take a year off, we'll stay in the cold this winter and see where things look next year.
Okay. Yeah. Brian?
So just real quick, I just wanted to switch topics here because we do have Cally on the call. And I want to make sure that she gets equal time here because I think it's a super important topic. And so we've been talking about how campgrounds are going to open back up, and that's kind of been the theme here, at least down in the States. How, Cally, in your perspective, can owners and employees work together to kind of prepare from a mental health perspective, right? Because you're opening back up. Maybe you're going to have some employees who are completely fine with going back. Maybe you're going to have some employees who are more cautious and thinking about how do I avoid getting sick, and maybe we're wearing masks and maybe we aren't. But there's a huge mental health aspect to this that I think is not talked about enough, or at least that I don't hear about it. And so please tell us what we should be doing down here that can help with that.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's definitely been interesting for me too. Like Cara mentioned, I guess in Canada, it sounds like it's so different. Like it's like been mandated that things are happening here, and it's kind of all across the board. So where it is more individualized with people and campgrounds being able to kind of make their own decisions, I think it's just really important to, sit with your employees and just really ensure that, like, hey, this is what we're doing to protect ourselves and to protect our campers, and like with training and understanding, but then also letting them know that and this is just from my perspective, but the ups and downs of emotions and like, yeah, we got this, to no, we don't, and I'm really concerned or really afraid, are maybe you might feel those a little bit more frequently because of the unknown and because of the, like, how long is this going to last, or are we really doing all that we can? And so it's just, the biggest thing is like, it's okay to not be okay. Maybe have an open type like a communication channel with the owner of the campground so that employees are able to ask questions, because I think that they're going to get hounded from the campers themselves about, well, what's this campground doing? So if the employees feel prepared, I think that will help ease the campers' anxiety, which will ease the employees' anxiety, which will help with everybody's mental health.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Ben.
And I know, I mean, it's very stressful for everyone. I can't imagine what Pat and Michael and even Cara are going through. And what are some practices that maybe, you know, the campground owners and stuff should be doing, maybe just to get away from it? I know, like, I sit down on my computer 6:30, 7 o'clock in the morning, and sometimes I look back up at the clock, it's 6:30, 7 o'clock at night, and I'm like, wow, I haven't done anything besides work. That can't be too healthy to do that for multiple days on end, I would imagine.
Well, Ben, I'd like to explore a little bit more what Cally was saying about our staff. Because it's so important that they understand that we care about them and that we take care of them. Most of them are work campers, and I'll give you a dichotomy of situations here. The smaller park that we have at Twin Lakes, they really don't even know this whole thing's going on. And I was there last week, and it was nice to hear somebody come out, and they were putting some stuff in the trash before they went to leave the park, and they said, "We came here and we forgot all about COVID-19. We didn't even know the rest of the world was going on." And I was just telling the managers that. I said, "You have no idea how blessed you are, because life is normal here, and people come here to get a sense and a feel of normal because they're not getting it out there." And I said, "You worked at the other park for a few years. You should go see it empty and talk to the other employees." And they kind of look at me strange and said, "No, you really need to go down there. Just go. It's an hour drive. Go down there and get a feel for what." They said, "That park's never been empty. We can't even imagine what it's like to be empty." And so their life is relatively unchanged. And so I kind of let them know how blessed you are to be experiencing normal life right now. Now at the other park, the staff is stressed. People are calling and they're fussing about refunds, and they're fussing about, you know, not being able to come and when are we going to be able to come. And some people are nice and polite, and some people are not. And, you know, most of them are campers, so they're good people, and they're being nice about it. But they have a real anxiety about whether or not they're going to have a job. So I feel like it was important as an employer to assure them, if you, from the very beginning of this, if you want to take time off, if you want to just stay in your camper, stay in your site, no charge for your site. You don't need to work no hours. You don't need to do anything if that's what you want to do. And some took us up on it. And if you want to work a little bit, that's fine. If you want to do, you know, a full schedule, we'll do that, because we've been working on capital improvements. We've painted everything. We told them, if your dog's laying still, we're going to paint your dog. And everything in the park's been painted. We've built stuff. We've built glamping tents and rebuilt some railroad tie walls and painted other walls. We're just staying busy. So anybody who wants to be paid, my wife and I cashed in our retirement savings to pay our staff. You stay here, work as much as you want. Don't work. It doesn't matter. You're going to get paid anyway. Stay here and alleviate that stress, because there is a light at the end of the tunnel. This is going to end. And I don't want to retrain people, and I don't want to lose these staff members. They're like family to me. So I want them here. They've helped us in hard times. They're taking the shots on the front line from everybody who's leaving the park. And so they feel the stress of it just like we do. And so I think we're going to come through this. They're going to be stronger. We're going to have a better morale. We can't get together and have, you know, staff dinners, but we are experiencing the same thing. And I want them to stay. I don't, like I said, I don't want to retrain people. I want to go find new people. We have a great staff. They're wonderful. And so we want to keep them. And so they need to know that they are, that we think about them, that we care about them. And those aren't just words. We're going to help you get through this because you're helping us get through this.
Oh, wonderful, Pat, that your scenario was that way. I just yesterday was Saturday, was on the phone with a owner here in Canada, and she was crying with me on the phone about losing her staff who, like you said, their family, I used to own an RV park. I completely empathized with her in that scenario. Those people that, you know, you build those long-term relationships with, that you, as an owner, you end up really relying on them to help you kind of make your day-to-day stuff happen. You get that real teamwork, camaraderie between you, and then to be in a position where she had to tell all of her staff. I mean, our scenario is a bit different, and so her park was just opening, and normally she would be bringing her staff back at this time, and she had to let them all know, like, I can't open my park. I'm mandated to be closed, so I have no revenue and no earnings and can't pay you, so I can't bring you back. And so that's having this ripple effect on these people's families and so many things, and she's really feeling the emotional weight of that, kind of drawing her, pulling her down even further, maybe, than, you know, on top of all the stress of her fixed asset expenses and all kinds of things in her park. She's experiencing some serious emotional strain right now.
Yeah.
I can't imagine it.
I think like for people in that type of situation, and I can definitely like empathize, although not in the same position, right? So I can't totally understand, but it's so important to understand that this situation is like the coronavirus is out of anyone's individual control at this point. So to try and offer understanding to others is often way more easy than applying understanding and gentleness to yourself. And it's not her fault that she is unable to ensure that she can pay her employees right now. And so I think a big thing will be to try and battle with that guilt of like, well, I'm not being able to offer employment to those people that I feel like are family. And any big changes, they're kind of like a loss, right? And so there might be a grieving process of not being able to see your employees that became like family. And so let yourself feel those emotions and go through that process and just wait and see how things change in the future, hopefully near future. But this is a lesson for so many people about you can't control it, so you cannot blame yourself. And if you find yourself doing that, then it's so important to reach out and look for services, look for mental health counseling, look for support groups online so that you can explore that guilty feeling or whatever it is that may, like stress, burnout, all of those things are so important to just find strategies and tools that are going to work for you so that you don't find yourself in a downward spiral of something that could be pretty impactful in your life.
Yeah.
Totally agree.
Wow. Yeah.
So Ben, let's I'm gonna unmute Trent here. I see he's on the call here from LSI. I don't know if he wants to join or if he stepped away, if he's paying attention, but if he wants to unmute himself, Trent, there we go. Trent, tell us a little bit about, we're talking about mental health here real quick, and then we want to get into what LSI is doing too, but how are you approaching, or have you even had a conversation with any of your owners, or has it been brought up about mental health and how people are dealing with this with their employees and things like that?
Yeah, we haven't touched on that a whole lot. We have had some discussions about more employee morale, that because there have been a lot of parks that, you know, started up and brought people in, and now it's, you know, on pause, and they're either having to send people back or saying, you know, we're not sure. And so, yes, the mental health aspect of it certainly is very serious, and there are, you know, much more professionals that can touch on that. We've kind of been focusing a little bit on the teamwork and the employee morale, as this is, as you guys were just saying, you know, something that goes beyond any one campground and even above the campground industry. Like, it would be one thing if this was something like, I don't know, that just affected the campground industry, but because it affects every facet of everything, you know, it just is hugely magnified. So, you know, there are so many factors in there, and mental health is certainly one of the key important ones, but admittedly, you know, we're not the be all end all experts on that. So we've tried to, refer people to the national resources for that standpoint.
So what are you doing as a company to help guide your franchisees through this period? I mean, because obviously, like Michael was saying, he's talking to some Jellystones that have more activities. You're more water park. You're more, crowds, right? It's a perception than a regular, typical independent campground. So how do you help them move forward?
Yeah, and since the whole time we've been trying to share information that we've seen from, other, campground industries like, RVIC and all the state associations, as well as information from outside the industry and just from across the board on some of the, best practices to start from in terms of, maintenance and social distancing. And then as we get more towards starting to reopen, we've had some, Zoom calls literally with all 75 parks of ours and sharing documents of how do you take the things that the Jellystone parks are known for and adapt them? Like while recreational camping isn't available in a lot of areas, our parks basically become traditional campgrounds. But as that starts to open up, then you think about, new and different ways. Like one of our parks has said, they usually do bingo a lot. So they've actually come up with an idea that when people check in, they're going to give bingo cards at check-in and literally do bingo and pull numbers over Zoom. And for, other things, there could be ways to, instead of amenities being all open, you just go when you want, whether it's a jumping pillow or things of that nature. Maybe you have to register for a time slot and we're going to limit the jumping pillow to, a family at a time in a 15-minute slot, and you could be at 4 and you could be at 4:15, or even for pools and water slides, as those are opening, we've talked maybe what you need to do is for the water slides, start to, mark X's on the ground 6 feet apart, and rather than the kids all being in line for a diving board or a slide, the line may go for several hundred yards, but it's every 6 feet and you just kind of move. So take the experiences, but how do you adjust them given the social distancing and the, new way of life that we'll have for the next couple of weeks, months, or however long this goes on?
When you have like a jumping pillow or something like that, obviously they're in contact with that surface. Is there like a cleaning in between each person's chance to jump on the jumping pillow or use the playground equipment, or how are you guys managing that, I guess?
And those are types of things that we're still trying to answer all those questions for everything. And we're looking at, direction from the manufacturers when they can share some advice. We're looking for, information from people that make cleaning products, because there's all different solutions. We're looking for, what we can find out from local health organizations as well as the national. So it's all still a moving target, but we're trying to, solve the answers as much as we want, because the key thing is to keep everyone as, protected as possible.
You briefly, go ahead, Ben, sorry.
I think you can speak to Pat and Michael too. They've been talking just about the excitement of the campers to get back to camping. And I think when we spoke last week, Trent, you've been talking about how a lot of people are eager to get back to Jellystone.
Yeah, we still see, like they had just mentioned, the calls are coming in and a lot on, Facebook. And, it is kind of funny that people are like, I've got my reservation for August 7th. Are you guys going to be open and fine? It's like, well, one hand, there's a lot that can change given the next couple of months. But the plus is that everyone is very excited to get back out and have some summer fun after, quote unquote, cabin fever and moms that have been trapped with kids for several weeks, and everybody wants to go out and have some fun again.
Yeah, Brian?
So how does technology help with this, Trent? Because I know LSI is kind of one of those organizations over the last few years I've seen you've been doing things with text messaging and other stuff like that. Campers app, for example. Is there ways that technology helps with this as we move forward from LSI's perspective?
Yeah, I mean, it certainly has. From, the first step is talking with our franchisees, and yes, we've been, distributing emails and making up, documents and sending them out. But literally, I don't know how many years ago, but up until now, I don't think we'd even thought within the building of, let's get all 75 franchisees on and have a Zoom call and basically make it a forum that, we'll share info. People can real time, just as we're doing now, ask questions and things. And something that we've talked about, that while this was created because of the coronavirus, but there's no reason why we shouldn't do this on an ongoing basis. Now that we all realize that the technology works probably a lot better than most of us had expected, that's a great way to have communication in addition to, emails and phone calls, because a lot of the, face-to-face visits and things, aren't going to happen for the next couple of weeks. So we'll utilize whatever we can for our franchisees. And then, yes, the same thing for consumers. There's always the emails, and now with apps, there's more things that you can do, and, to take advantage of it as much as we can, just because the information has changed on, even an hourly basis at times. And, as Michael had just said, there are states where different counties have different rules. So there could be two, Jellystone parks that are, 100 miles apart that have very different operations because they're in different counties.
Are you seeing different parks come up with different activities to adjust to this? I know you briefly talked about bingo and Zoom and stuff like that, but are there examples that you can give us, like that some of your Jellystone parks are doing? Because they're so heavily focused on activities, right? I figure there's a lot of creative minds there. So is there specific things that you've seen that they're doing that maybe other campgrounds could mimic?
Yeah, and they're still, coming up with lists, and anytime that we find something, we're sharing within the system. But, especially even now when many of them are in the, non-recreational camping. So it started very small, like with arts and crafts projects. Instead of having everybody come to the arts and crafts room, now they can give the kits to people as they check in, and then through Facebook Live have a video that if you can do it with the person, that's great, or you can just, replay it afterwards, or the bingo via Zoom, or, other things. That's trying to take that same experience and just how do you, recreate it into today's rules, I guess.
I think those activities really help on the mental health side too. I think that gives that kind of fills that social interaction void that a lot of us are feeling, and gives us the ability to kind of communicate with people other than our kids that we're tired of, and those kinds of things. So yeah, from a guest perspective, I love that. I'm super excited to see more parks.
Yeah, and many of our parks are doing the same type thing, even for guests that aren't on property, just to, stay engaged with people that wanted to be here now. They're doing, crafts on Facebook Live, and some of the parks are even, doing Facebook Lives with the costume characters that kids can, email or send in. It's like, if you were there to celebrate your birthday, let us know. And then, Yogi and, the team can help, John celebrate his 7th birthday, even if he's not at the park.
Yeah. Great. And Trent, did I see a Yogi even doing like a photo scavenger hunt too? So you're still like getting people and kids out in the park, but it's not necessarily something they need to like, stand in line for, or touch somebody's, shake someone's hand or anything like that.
Yeah, exactly. Scavenger hunt's another idea that, definitely multiple parks are using. And then, like for the costume characters, kids love to hug Yogi, Boo Boo, and Cindy and high five them. Obviously, we can't do that now, but some of the parks are kind of basically staging photo bombs. So you take the family and then put the characters, 6 feet back, and obviously it's a little bit more staged than normal, but it's a way that they can still get a, souvenir picture of their family and the characters without breaking the 6-foot rule. Or there was even one park that realized that they had a one of their facilities with a loft that was actually 6 feet up, that had a door that the characters could go out, and they're standing above the families, kind of looking down. But it's something that wouldn't have been done before, but it still gives the same experience, but follows the social distancing rules.
I feel like Yogi's a basic giant mass that's all over his body though. So maybe we could go down to 3 feet with Yogi. I don't know.
I think we got a question from Ben Bryce too. He was mentioning, he asked. Well,
here, let's allow him to talk, Ben. He's on the Zoom thing. So
yeah, sure.
Ben, you there?
Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Hey guys, how are you all?
Good.
So I'm Ben Bryce with the Ivy Group. We manage 8 properties and throughout the United States. And I have been listening, and I hear a lot of talk about practices and mental health, and it's all really good stuff. But I'm curious if anybody knows of any parks that are doing well during the coronavirus, if there's any contradictory cases. And the reason that I brought that up is our 8 parks are very different across the states, and we've seen a lot of typically what most campground owners have seen, except in one of our parks in Kansas City has actually improved over last year. And so it's actually financially outperforming, which is kind of interesting. So I'm just, the reason for that, at least at our property, is that people in the Kansas City metro area are dying to get out, and they're using this particular property as like a weekend nature getaway. So I guess I want to focus on what are the success stories during this, like at least our one park, and what can we borrow at least from other parks and can start applying.
I do have one member here in Alberta who was granted the ability, unlike the other campgrounds in the province, to take guests on a shorter term basis. Currently, the health authority is requiring longer term stays only, but during his health inspection, he was given approval to take overnight guests, and he had near 100% capacity over Easter weekend. And apparently, well, he made the news because of it. And so now, since he's open and taking nightly guests, he his phone's been ringing off the hook with kind of all the media exposure. All of our public parks, pretty much everything else is closed here. So he's got a really kind of unique corner on the market because he's open and the public knows about it. And he has a really great, really beautiful park. He actually has a full-size steam engine track in his park. He's got a train. I mean, he's got a ton of amenities and yeah, they're doing all kinds of unique, ingenious things to maintain social distancing and engage folks in those activities within kind of health parameters. So out of all of my members, he's the only one I'm seeing any sort of significant positive scenario right now. I do anticipate that turning around as we start employing this phased reopening plan and more parks are open. I think because people are so anxious to get out and not be stuck at home anymore, and you know, here in Canada, especially with the weather finally turning around and it's not snowing anymore, everybody's ready. So I do think we'll start seeing more and more of those really positive stories coming out.
We're seeing that in Florida as well. I'm on a text with all the Florida board members on a daily basis, and there are some other parks that are not geared towards snowbirds. They're more family-oriented parks, and they're experiencing what we are at the Twin Lakes Park, which is business as usual, or a longer spring break with more people coming on the weekends because they just want to get outside. So it's actually been better for us than normal.
And I think Michael, Brian had mentioned, Brian Schaefer, the executive director of TACO, had mentioned that, you know, you had some parks that were doing fairly well too, right?
Yeah, you know, whether it was slightly up or even flat, I think they would take that as a win right now, you know, certainly in light of everything. And again, it goes back to a lot of the parks for Texas have a lot of the long-term stays, so monthlies or longer. And so those folks, let's face it, were not as heavily affected. I mean, maybe in the Valley because they were going home to Canada and maybe got called back, but if they were not Canadian and they were just there for work or for other reasons, then yeah, they didn't see much of a difference, quite honestly. And for Ben, and you know, we do some stuff for Ben too. I think again, because what we've learned with Texas and even on the AGS side of site maps, every park is its own kind of profile. So for a park in Kansas City, there's a lot of factors that go into it, meaning it's smack dab in the middle of the country. So people that are going home, whether south to north, east to west, or vice versa, that's like a perfect place to stay because it's right smack dab in the middle. So I'm sure they're seeing a lot of people that are on their way home or whatever. And again, it goes back to which states are kind of looser than others. And even if those that aren't, it's about perception too. You know, so for example, if you've got California, for example, the perception there, I think around the country is, holy crap, there's nothing out there open. But you know, for a lot of places they are, again, they got to cater to kind of certain clientele. So again, I really wish there was kind of a one size fits all solution for all of us that would make this a lot easier, but it's just not. I mean, and that's what a lot of what Taco's been doing the last couple of weeks is literally talking to park owners on a city by city or county by county basis to kind of learn, okay, what did they say in Dallas County as opposed to Tarrant County? Because for example, up here, we work in Tarrant County, which is where Fort Worth is, but Dallas County is much stricter than Fort Worth. And so even that is confusing to our staff here because it's like, okay, Dallas said this, but Fort Worth is doing this. And it's just, believe me, it's not very efficient, but again, it's just the time we live in, and that's just what we got to do. It's about getting the info out and making sure it's timely because I think, as someone said, it changes literally by the hour. And I remember those 2 weeks where it was just, you know, domino effect of states and counties. I mean, it was just something different literally every hour. I mean, every hour there was some update, and it was a nightmare to kind of get that info out and still make it relevant 6 hours from now, you know, so. Anyway, so the long answer to your short question, Ben, yes, we've got several parks that quite honestly have not seen much of effect as far as revenue goes.
Cally, I think you wanted to say something.
Oh, I was just going to say, like, I think one of the things to kind of go on, like, what are the success stories? Like, just because I do work in the schools, I think a lot of parents are so overwhelmed with technology right now, that part of going camping is going to be escaping from social media and escaping from technology. So I so admire all of the campgrounds who are like, yes, let's make bingo over Zoom, or, you know, so that you can have that connection. I love it. I also think people are just going to want to escape it. So find a balance. You don't have to like dive right into making everything technology based, and stress yourself out over how am I going to make the camping experience the same as it used to be, but different. Because I really truly, like, my perspective personally is I'm just going to want to go camping, and I'm going to want to disconnect, and I want to be in nature. And I kind of like Mr. O'Neill's campground, his business as usual, because people want to go and forget. Mm-hmm. So don't burn yourself out trying to figure out all the ways to make your campground based in technology. Just find that balance.
I think I'm on a Zoom call 12 hours of each day. I'm going to use some time away from Zoom.
Yeah, I've never been on Zoom so much as I am now. So I think I'd like to bring Mark Cope on just for a minute. He was going to talk real briefly about his Back to Camping Summit, which is kind of geared towards what we've been talking about as far as reopening parks. And I know he's been working on getting speakers for that. Toby O'Rourke from KOA is going to be the keynote speaker. And so I guess, Mark, just where are you at on the planning for this Back to Camping Summit?
Hey, Ben, thanks for having me. So the Back to Camping Summit is at btcamping.com. The whole idea is to give park owners and operators the tools, techniques, strategies, and action plans they're going to need to get back into business. We are exactly 13 days in from concept to now. We have 22 speakers lined up for 19 sessions. The event's going to be keynoted by Toby O'Rourke. You can go to that btcamping.com and see the list of folks. The entire idea is we as an industry can come through this if we work together. And if we bring everybody together at this one moment in time, we can bring all of these solutions to the forefront and really kind of come out of this as a unified force. So that was the general concept. We're moving really fast on this entire thing, and really trying to put together a solid, quick bite of information that owners can take and implement into their parks.
Yeah. I know I'm finding it, just the variety of topics is really interesting. I think as we talked with Michael and Pat and Cara and just the folks we had on last week, there's just so many different angles to this whole thing. And just being able to wrap your head around it in one like virtual summit and being able to maybe get some answers to your questions in one area, that's going to be real beneficial. So.
Yeah, you know, we run a Facebook group with over 2,000 parks in it, and we started looking about 2.5 weeks ago at what could we do to help them get where they were. And as you just alluded to, the problem is so big, we didn't have all the answers. And so by bringing together all the experts from across the industry into one spot where they could provide that information, that was really key. And you know, it being an online summit, you know, there was somebody was just mentioning the Zoom and how people are really kind of moving to technology. Our original concept was just to do this for free, but there's actually a hurdle to get people to go online and take those steps that are necessary when their browser crashes or when the internet's not working. And so we ended up putting a fee on it because we knew that fee would create the value for folks. But the reality is, if you don't have $50 to go to it, it's free. There's a scholarship. Everybody gets it. We want everybody involved with this event. And we're really trying to put something together unique here. And I think we've got it. I think this is going to be really exciting. So we're really looking forward to it. The pressure's on. It'll be May 11th through 12th.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I mean, that is a lot of pressure. So you got like a short time to put that together. So you're doing a good job.
Yeah, you know, we recognize that by stepping out, we were going to really put ourselves out there a little bit. But in the end, our goal is pure. We want to help the industry and bring all these ideas together. So we're just going to move mountains to make that happen. And really, the folks coming together on this has been amazing. The industry partners, speakers, the sessions, just the software itself, everything's kind of coming together in place. We've got about 2 weeks to make this thing happen, and we're well on our way to making it happen. So love to have everybody join if they're willing. It's btcamping.com.
Awesome.
All right. Thanks, Mark.
Thank you.
I think Ben had another question, Brian, if you wanted to bring him on again.
Yeah, let me bring him on here in a second. I just want to say, like we talked about, Ben, that we're at probably about an hour mark here. We're just going to keep a discussion going for, as long as there's a discussion going. But for those of you who are watching, you don't have to stick through the whole time. It's going to be recorded. It's going to be posted on Facebook, YouTube, right, Ben, a few other places. Yeah. So you can come back and reference it if you need to dip out. But we're just going to, as long as there's good discussions, we'll keep it going. I mean, not 6 hours, I don't think, Ben, but a few minutes longer. Let me do Ben. Okay, there you go, Ben. You have another question?
There's a lot of Bens on this call. So I wanted, this might be one of those ideas that sounds better in my head than it does in reality, but I'm going to put it out there because I thought what Cally said was really insightful, and it kind of popped in my head. What if the campgrounds, when we start opening back up, we get back to it, what if there's a need for people to get away from technology and cell phones? So what value do you think there would be in say running, for example, like an activity weekend for fishing, hiking, doing outdoor stuff, and we offer to try to separate people from your technology? Like, hey, if you want to be without cell phones as a family for a weekend, we'll, I don't know, have a lockbox, and you can opt in, you don't have to do it, but we'll separate you from technology and give you a whole suite of things to do that don't involve being glued to a phone 24/7.
I think there's big value in that. Yeah.
Yeah,
I think
yeah, you can get a lot of money sometimes to go on retreats, mindfulness, mental health retreats. And so if you guys do want to connect with professionals or even me, you can find me at the Wellness House on Facebook or Instagram. But you could create like a mindfulness scavenger hunt where people go out and do a mindfulness walk. And, this could be a total escape from technology, increase your mental health, go fishing, connect with your family. I think that is a wonderful, wonderful idea. And yes, like a lockbox, test yourself. Like that's a really good idea. But finding grounding exercises, mindfulness things, like if you guys ever need ideas, I'm always full of them. So
yeah, awesome.
Yeah. I think one of I was reading last year, there was this campground, I think it was in Pennsylvania. They had like a room that they set up and you could like pay to like go smash stuff. And I mean, I think I could do something like that.
I need that.
I think some cities have them. I think they call them like rage rooms or something. I don't know if you would want to call it that, but you just give like people an opportunity to like go blow off steam. I mean, I'm all into that sometimes, but that was an interesting idea. So
so if you're all into this, give us specific examples, Ben. We'd like to hear more about this. Where have you rage roomed it out?
Yeah, okay. No,
I mean, you brought it up, so
that's for the other discussions.
Oh, okay.
I would
all right.
sign up for that camping trip for sure. I would be there for that one.
So I think it's interesting that more places haven't already kind of done this, though. I mean, the coronavirus has kind of brought the technology, to the forefront, but it's kind of interesting that campgrounds haven't offered some of these experiences with like the lock boxes and things before, because I know KOA's annual report highlights the fact that, they're trying to separate from technology. So it's not something that's brand new. It's just at the forefront kind of in our minds.
I was going to say, this whole situation is creating so much kind of creative, intuitive problem solving that I think will be one of the good news, positive things that comes out of all of this. It's definitely going to make some lasting changes in every aspect of our lives, I think.
Yeah. So, Pat, I know down at your other resort, the name slips my mind all of a sudden. That's what's that like? I guess the separation from technology there. Are a lot of your campers coming to separate from technology?
Well, we offer the Wi-Fi for them because
Yeah.
they do want that, but I think they want to separate from it, but they don't want to be totally separated from it. They want a little less stress from it, but I don't think they're there to completely unplug from it. There are places you can go where you're off the grid to do that, but I think they're just trying to minimize their connectivity. They would fuss if we did not have TV and Wi-Fi. They would.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I do think it depends on your park. I mean, if you have the ability to offer fishing excursions and maybe, hire a local yoga teacher and those kinds of things, that's amazing. But for sure, your demographic is going to be a factor.
Well, and especially for the private parks, I mean, there's a reason why people will go to a private park with amenities as opposed to a state park, which, let's face it, does not have many of the same amenities. So for a lot of us I know who work with the private parks, it's because they have access to it. And like Pat said, they may not, look, they're not going to be walking around the trail on their phone necessarily, but do they still want their phone back in the rig so that when they get back, they can check their text messages or email? Yeah, they're still going to want that. And I don't know that something like this is going to change that necessarily, but do I think as a way to get the message out to RVers to remind them why they go camping? Yeah, I think it's great because it will remind them. Because like web traffic's up across the board. That you can't deny that with everyone working from home or even, again, sadly, the people that maybe are furloughed or whatever, web usage is up. It just, and people are going to want to, I think a lot of folks not be as wired in as they probably are around the clock right
now. And Pat, Michael, I guess part of this huge reopening parks discussion, there is marketing, and I know you alluded to it a little bit there, just being able to get out to the consumers and say, hey, we are a relaxing place to come to get away from technology and to practice social distancing. How have you guys been looking at the marketing, I guess from Taco's perspective, as far as getting the messaging out there, and Pat, from, I guess, your own park's perspective, how do you market that, we're open, I guess?
Well, we've not done a lot of push with the marketing right now. Yeah. I did do an email blast when we found out the beaches were going to be open, just to let people know that we've got some new glamping tents and that beaches will be open on Friday. But really took the foot off the gas pedal on the marketing, because that's not necessary. The state of Florida has stopped international marketing. They stopped their organization, which is kind of a quasi-government private organization. They really backed off. They started making plans to regroup and how are we going to do this later in the summer and next year, what are we going to do? But it's not marketing as usual, that's for sure. We're going to have to make some adjustments for it. And I think there's so much pent up desire to go camping right now and be outside. This is going to be so favorable to our industry. I don't think the entire economy is going to recover in a hurry, but we're going to recover quicker because we're what people want. They're going to want to get outside. They've been locked up. They got to get out.
And I guess, Michael, Taco covers an entire state, I guess. Obviously, I would imagine you're having to take a county per county approach as to whatever marketing you may be looking at, I guess.
Well, I know on the Taco side, so part of one of the things the association does, a big thing, is produce the RV Travel and Camping Guide to Texas, which is our annual publication that lists all our campgrounds. And then we manage the TexasCampgrounds.com website. So one of the things we're doing is kind of emphasizing to campgrounds, first off, hey, you can get web marketing and get it now through the association, because that is going to be the need right now, is when people, like Pat said, are going to start looking for those vacations and start looking around, they need to make sure that people know they're open. Because again, there's going to be some questions and some doubt. And honestly, that's still the number one question. I think we all talked about it here, that a campground's getting is, are you open, or when are you open? So for now, it's imperative that they let people know that they're open. So for the association, the web is obviously the most immediate need, but then we're reminding them, as far as our print publication, that next year, the demand is still going to be there. It's not like, air is going to be let out of the balloon this fall and then, hey, everyone's back to normal. There's still going to be some pent up desire, I think, there next year, certainly for the people that had to cancel their plans this year altogether. So we're kind of educating them and making sure they understand that, hey, there's still things you can do now if you're able to. Obviously, a lot of campgrounds are being hurt financially on it. And again, we're sensitive to that, but we also want to make sure that when they do make it to the other side, and let's face it, they all will, that they're able to capitalize on that, because it is going to be fast and furious once the restrictions start coming loose on that. And again, there is going to be demand. The key there will also be to honestly to get out in front of your neighbor and competitor down the street to make sure that if somebody's going to San Antonio, that you're the one they go to.
Michael, are you seeing a ton of usage or readership with your print versions of your guide?
Well, okay. Well, let me make sure I understand the question. You mean like demand for it, people requesting it, or?
Yeah. Do you go through thousands of copies? Like we are seeing some, or receiving some requests and doing some work to kind of go to an app-based version of the guide instead of printing at all anymore. And yeah, I'm just interested to hear how your print still goes.
Sure. So on the taco side, like I said, our publication is, it's 150 pages. It's a full-on guide. And we print a couple 100,000 copies every year. And quite honestly, we run out every year. And then at this time specifically, quite honestly, we haven't seen a difference necessarily one way or the other as far as the demand for the printed piece. We have, it is free to everyone that goes on texascampgrounds.com. We mail it out to them wherever they may be. And we haven't seen a drop off. I mean, people know that they can still get that because, again, this is for making their plans later in the year. If they're getting the printed publication, it's not necessarily, hey, I'm going somewhere next week and I need it now. It's more about planning for the future. So on that end, quite honestly, we haven't seen a lot of difference there. On the AGS side, which is a little different, we do the campground guides for campgrounds all around the country and Canada, I should say. We're still printing and producing those as honestly as if it were normal, meaning the campgrounds are still able to proof, and they need an updated piece, quite honestly, before, again, this grand reopening. They want to make sure that they have something that's accurate and timely. And let's face it, people like Pat ain't going to have time when things are open and they're getting, hundreds of check-ins a week. It's just not going to be, they're not going to be able to do it. So no, we're stressing to our folks, hey, look, take care of this now. Before you don't have the time, because when this thing opens up, you're going to be busier than you've ever been.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Advertising, getting your listings, all of those things is super important right now. Get all that admin stuff out of the way.
Right. Well, and look, just like, Pat was saying, as far as the capital improvements of the park, this is another form of that. Get it all squared away now. Get your website up to date. Get your marketing up to date. Because again, this will not last forever. And you want to be prepared. You want to have it ready to go for when the demand is there again.
Yeah, I agree totally.
Ben, do we have any questions from Facebook that I'm assuming you're paying attention to that because I'm not, so.
Facebook? Oh yeah, we are on Facebook. No, we haven't had any questions. So I guess, I spoke with some people last week that just talked about improvements at parks. And I think, Pat, you mentioned that you're doing some improvements at your park during this downtime. And I guess you mentioned, taking care of marketing during this downtime. I guess, Cara or Michael, have you heard of any park owners that are using this time to maybe do a lot of improvements to their parks, or things that maybe they would have put off, but they're getting to now, I guess?
I certainly am. I have several members, because we're required to keep bathroom and shower facilities closed right now. It's kind of an ideal time to do any work in there. Since guests can't access that space anyway, I have several members taking advantage and trying to do some updates. There's some barriers to that in terms of finances. Obviously, that's a precarious scenario right now based on, the season just starting. So we've just come out of a long winter and maybe don't have a ton of, dough laying around. With on top of concerns with reduced revenue, but definitely several of my members have said yes, they are fixing up the bathrooms. The facilities that are closed are getting the attention right now.
Yeah, really. And I know, Michael, I think a lot of your parks are, some of your parks are staying busy. So they may just be doing the normal improvements, I guess.
Yeah, there's been, a handful of folks that maybe paused it for now, but I haven't seen anything widespread necessarily. If they were able to get the funding before all this, then yeah, they're moving forward. They don't see this as a reason to to not do that. So
yeah, okay, all right. Well, I don't have anything questions per se. I guess Brian, do you have anything else?
No, nothing major. I think I want to give Cally a chance to just wrap it up and give us maybe some tips that she thinks people can take away from this from a mental health perspective, and then we can kind of just open the floor to anybody who wants to wrap it up too.
Okay. Well, I certainly just want to say, I appreciate everything that you guys are doing to open campgrounds and to carry on for this camping season, especially in Canada, right? Because it snows most of the time here, it seems like. So it's so important because I think camping is part of people's normal, and they're going to want to get outside, as Pat had mentioned before. They're going to want to go spend time with family. So I truly do appreciate all the steps and everything that you guys are taking to do that. If people can go camping, that's going to be huge for their mental health. It's going to be huge for employees' mental health because that gives them a purpose. The employers, they can feel good about opening their campground and helping people out. I think it's just about acknowledging how your mental health is doing, getting help if you need it, especially given the circumstances and the stress and anxieties that people can have right now. Reach out to the people in your area, be mindful of self-care and what that looks like. It's not always a bubble bath. It could be connecting with people in whatever capacity that is. It could be about going out in nature. And again, if anyone has any questions or they want further support, it's easy right now, right? Anyone can connect with me online. So that could be an option too if anyone has any questions or just wants some more support or ideas around this and how to encourage mental health for themselves, their employees, or people that they're noticing are kind of suffering or having a hard time. So I think that's all for me, unless people have specific questions. I hope it was helpful today. But thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Well, go ahead and give your contact info out if you want people to reach out to you.
I think the easiest way for people to connect with me would just be to search the Wellness House. It's a private practice that I have, and it's on Facebook and Instagram. I do have an email too, and it's thewellnesshouse.cs@gmail.com that people can reach out that way too. And then going forward, I do have some confidential online services that I can offer that way for face-to-face or over the phone counseling if people are interested in that as well. And like I said, all over the world works now, right? Because it's all online. So, and I think Cara had mentioned that she was maybe going to post the links to the social media pages that I have set up right now. There's a book now option on Facebook and things like that. So yeah, putting that out there if anyone needs some more support.
Okay, thank you. I really appreciate you being on.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Pat,
anybody else got some last thoughts? Or
yeah, I want to make a comment here. One of the things that I found that's been real beneficial is to spending more time with family. I know if you've got the smaller kids and you're not used to having them around, maybe that's a little bit stressful. But we've taken on 4 cousins who are out of school. Their mom just went through cancer treatments, and so she's highly susceptible. And so there are 4 teenage boys up to 20 that are out of school. So they've come to here to live with us. So we break the 10-person violation whenever we have dinner at 6 o'clock. But we've gotten back into an actual time to have dinner. We're eating out of the freezer because my wife and one of my daughters are hunters. So we've got a freezer full of food. So we're not going to the grocery store as much, but we've kind of made it a time to think about preparations. And I'm a little bit of a prepper, and I just thought I was a prepper. Now I've got all kinds of ideas for what we really need to be doing to be a prepper for a crisis. But I'd like to say for the mental health aspect that Cally's mentioned, spending quality time with your family, not seeing it as an aggravation, but rather seeing it as a blessing to take a break from everyday life. And two more things. I find this. The Psalms are extremely helpful right now. If you're stressed, you think you were stressed, read about the life that David lived and the things that he wrote about and where he found comfort in. And then don't forget to Jesus said, take the boat out. Appreciate you putting this together, Ben.
Yeah, thanks. Well, it was Brian too. Brian's been in on this. So, Michael, anything to wrap up or?
Well, I think last thing, and I think it was something Cally said, was I think the biggest part is finding some kind of balance of what we all do going forward. Because, whether it's Facebook or social media, you see people on one side or the other, right? Who are either A, oh no, open everything back up and don't take any precaution. Or B, you got people saying, oh no, lockdown for a year until everyone's vaccinated. Well, neither one of those is going to work right now. So we all have to figure out the best way to adapt, really. And that goes for the campgrounds too, because there's a lot of things for the campgrounds to do. And I think you, Cara, said it best. I mean, a lot of things are going to come out of this, which are going to stick, which is good. And it's up to us really to kind of figure those things out. I mean, look, this is it. This is no time like the present. So for us, it's all about working with campgrounds, with customers, et cetera, and trying to figure out what that balance is for them that still lets them do their thing. I mean, quite honestly, I don't know another way to put it. So, if somebody has a marketing question or a park in Texas, my email is michael@texasadvertising.net. So any question, anytime. I've got my email on my phone. I'm not one of those yet that can completely disconnect, so I'll answer it pretty quickly.
Yeah. Cara, any thoughts?
Not particularly, no. I think, like I said before, I think a lot of great things are going to come out of this. It seems like, the times when our hands are really tied and things seem really rough is the times when we make the most kind of ingenious, creative solutions to our problems. And I admire humans for that, if for nothing else.
All right. And, we're trying to do this at Woodalls as part of an effort to just get more information out there. Obviously, a lot of our conversation's been about COVID, but we're also looking at topics besides COVID. Obviously that's at the forefront of everyone's mind, but as we move out of that, we'll get into some other topics too. And if you guys have if anyone watching has any ideas about who might want to come on or any ideas for topics, things like that, you can always email me at B as in boy, Quiggle, Quiggle @rvbusiness.com. And, check out our website, woodallscm.com. Everything we do is free. We have a print magazine we distribute for free to subscribers, and we do a daily email blast with news in the industry. That's free too. So feel free to reach out, and we're always willing to take suggestions and help you find answers to questions and different things like that. So, Brian?
That's all I got. You guys wrapped it up fine. So I think next week we got a few more people coming on. We're not going to announce it quite yet. We're going to make you guys wait a day or two. But yeah, really appreciate Michael, Pat, Cally being on here, Cara, as always. Ben, whatever you do as part of this, I'm not sure, but
we hope it was worth your time to come on. So
thank you guys.
And thanks for being willing to, and thanks everyone for taking the time to watch this. So
all right. Take care, guys.
Appreciate it. Thanks.
Bye. Bye.